There's growing concerns that the war that Israel is waging against Hamas could turn into a wider regional conflict. And the reasons for that can be seen over what's happened just in the last few days here in Israel, the Gaza Strip, and the wider Middle East. First of all, in Gaza, we've seen Israel continue just these pounding airstrikes targeting the Strip, which is home to some 2 million Palestinians. Now, the Israelis have urged Palestinians to go south to avoid these airstrikes, but even then, Israeli airstrikes are even hitting in the south in what they've described as safe areas previously, which has enraged Muslim nations and others sympathetic to the Palestinians. We've seen widespread protests largely in many countries around the world. Now, outside of the Gaza Strip, we're also seeing problems in Israel's West Bank, where Israel launched an unprecedented airstrike on Jenin, which saw a mosque destroyed and suspected militants killed. Now, the West Bank hasn't really seen that much militant activity, but it has been steadily rising in recent years, with Palestinian frustration over the fact that they still don't have their own state. Egypt and Israel have had a decades-long peace deal that have cemented basically the wider region, and that attack kind of drew into question what would happen if, for some reason, that peace deal was broken. And we've also heard from Egypt's president offering very harsh words about Israeli policy towards the Gaza Strip attacks, and has also raised the concern that Palestinians might be forced to leave Gaza and enter Egypt, something that the Egyptian president has said he does not want to see. Hamas is also suspected of receiving weapons from Iran as well. That's led a lot of Israelis to be concerned about this escalating into a war with Iran. Israel has waged, or is suspected of waging, secret attacks on Iran, including on its nuclear scientists as well as its nuclear facilities, as Iran enriches uranium closer than ever to weapons-grade levels, worrying the West. And there's still just that the war in Gaza itself, the images of destroyed neighborhoods, wounded and dying children have really raised the anger of the wider Middle East, and those scenes have really drawn a lot of sympathy and drawn these mass protests, which raised the concern for Israel as well as the United States that as this war goes on, that more and more people could become upset, and it could renew new pressure on both the U.S.-Israeli relationship as well as limit Israel's ability to act and conduct strikes and potentially a ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. As of right now, the state of the war is this. Israel is continuing just these relentless airstrikes on the Gaza Strip that have seen civilians killed. Now, the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says over 5,000 people have been killed so far in these Israeli strikes. Now, that number is a little bit under dispute because it also includes a disputed hospital explosion that Israel has blamed on a misfired militant rocket, and Hamas has alleged, without providing evidence, that it was an Israeli strike. Since October 7th, authorities here say some 1,400 Israelis were killed in that initial unprecedented Hamas attack that saw them break out of Gaza and invade kibbutzes as well as military bases, in taking hostages as well. Now, there are some 200 hostages estimated to be held by Hamas right now. They include foreigners. Now, the Americans say there's some 10 Americans unaccounted for. France says there's some 7 French nationals unaccounted for, as well as other nations. So it really puts a lot of pressure on Israel to see these hostages released. We've also seen protests by Israeli families of those taken, calling on the government to do more and trying to put more pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who already faced popular protests over months over his planned changes to the judiciary that people in Israel described as affecting their democracy. It's difficult to say what's going to happen next, but based on what Israeli military officials have said so far, the Israeli military at some point will launch a ground offensive into the Gaza Strip. This only happened twice before in the some 15 years that Hamas has ruled the Gaza Strip, and it really raises the risk for both Israelis as well as the Palestinian citizens still in Gaza. The reason is this. Though Israel has launched a lot of airstrikes that have destroyed high-rise buildings and potentially taken away possible sniper positions for Hamas, the rubble and everything strewn across the Gaza Strip makes it difficult for the Israelis to maneuver with their armored personnel carriers and their tanks. It also provides militants additional places to hide possible explosives as well as snipers and other fighters.